Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're taking a look at the big buff to Skeledirge in the Season 17 balance patch. Skeledirge fast move Incinerate went from 15 base damage to 20. This means at any given time it's doing 33% more fast move damage, and as you can imagine that has an impact on the matches. This now gives Skeledirge way more pressure when it comes to fast move farming it down. Skeledirge is not without its counters, but I do think it's established itself as a staple anti-meta pick. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's check out Skeledirge with newly buffed Incinerate. Hopping into the first match, picking up an amazing lead, Skeledirge into Clefable. Clefable's energy is fully walled here, and right off the bat, look at the Incinerate damage from the Skeledirge. This thing hits so hard. Opponent going to save switch into wall rain, but this is not a response to Skeledirge. Skeledirge with a massive energy advantage, able to make it to not only a Shadow Ball plus a Disarming Voice. Opponent is going to be shielding up the Disarming Voice. They do have enough for the Earthquake. I will respect it with a shield, and the opponent does not bait. This allows me the ability to farm down. Down goes Wall Rain. In the back, opponent has their own Credilli. I'm firing off the Shadow Ball. The Shadow Ball is going to hurt, doing big damage to Credilli. Before Credilli can even make it to a charge move, I'm at a Disarming Voice. Disarming Voice is no shielded. Opponent will fire off the last second Rock Slide, but I'm looking for the full sweep. I will be shielding up that energy. In comes Clefable. Clefable will be able to fire off the Moonblast here. No shields remaining for the Skeledirge, but it is a resisted move, so Skeledirge is able to withstand the damage. I'm firing off the Disarming Voice, expecting the opponent to shield. Can the opponent get the farm down here up the Skeledirge? No, they're forced to throw energy, and Skeledirge by itself takes out 2 3/4 Pokemon. And now, I can very comfortably send in Credilli. Meteor Mash hits for super effective damage, but Credilli can tank it no problem. Absorbing the Meteor Mash damage, making it to the Grass Knot, and that's going to secure the victory. We see a Nightmare lead in the next match, Skeledirge into Shadow Gligar. Oh my goodness. Immediate save switch into Credilli. Opponent gonna stay in for a little bit and then send in Steelwing Skarmory. Steelwing Skarmory is now rank 1 on PvPoke for the Great League. Previously, the main thing that was holding Skarmory back was it had a truly terrible fast move of Air Slash. And now with Steelwing being significantly improved, I believe it's now a Steel-type Poison Jab clone. Skarmory, you're going to be seeing quite a bit of it. Opponent is going to be firing off the Sky Attack, that's perfectly fine, and I'm going to send in Skeledirge. Even if they make it to the Brave Bird, that's fine by me. I'm still not going to shield as I can absorb this damage. Opponent only goes for the Sky Attack, hoping to make it to another move, but Skeledirge not going to let that happen. I'm expecting Golurk to shield no matter what, so I will go for the Disarming Voice. Opponent sends in the Golurk, but switches into the Lanturn to catch the Disarming Voice. However, this is perfect for me, as now I can send in the Guzzlord. This is a game where unfortunately they were ABA strong against the Skeledirge, both the Lanturn and of course the Shadow Gligar do very well there. But a lot of things that do very well against the Skeledirge do not want to see the Guzzlord. Guzzlord is going to be shielding up the Surf just to maintain a little bit of HP, because as we know, those Mud Slaps from Shadow Gligar are going to hurt. I'm going for the Crunch. Golurk has 2 shields to hide behind, and they're going to start using them here. I'm farming up. I'm able to make it to a Dragon Claw plus a Crunch, and this should be game over. I fire off the Dragon Claw. I go to click the Crunch, and that should be a CMP tie and mean that it's game over. Opponent goes for the Shadow Punch. For some reason, it didn't register the Crunch, but thankfully, I'm able to click it. The Crunch will secure the knockout, and despite the terrible lead, we take the win. Moving to the next match, leading Skeledirge into Mandibuzz. Believe it or not, in the Ultra League, this is now a winning matchup for Skeledirge. But in the Great League, Skeledirge doesn't quite have the bulk to pull it off, so I'm going to bank some energy and then save switch into Credilli. Opponent goes for the Aerial Ace. I'm farming up, going for the Rock Slide, and the opponent catches onto their own Credilli. Okay, alright, we've got the Battle of Credilli. Now, Grass Knot does do more here, but a Grass Knot is not going to be enough to one-shot, so instead, I'm just going to go for the double Rock Slide, as 2 Rock Slides from here will be more than enough to KO my opponent. I can no-shield, I tank any one move. Opponent is going to be firing off the Grass Knot. That does get me low, but I'm able to tank it and make it to the Rock Slide. Rock Slide will force switch or shield advantage. Opponent is going to give up their shield. That's perfectly fine. I don't really want to have to shield when I farm down this Credilli, so instead of sending in the Skeledirge, I'm going to send in the Guzzlord. I have a bit of energy on the Skeledirge. I'm 1 Incinerate away from either a Disarming Voice or a Shadow Ball, so now I'm just going to tank the energy on the Guzzlord, and let's see what they send in. They send in the Mandibuzz. This could get interesting. So it seems like they may have another Pokemon in the back that does not want to see the Guzzlord. I'm going to be firing off this Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw will deal some solid chip damage onto the Mandibuzz and put it closer to Disarming Voice range. I'm going to let this through, and then in comes Skeledirge. Skeledirge does get the one-turn switch. I don't want to throw on Alignment, so I just end up going for the extra Incinerate. Opponent will fire off the Aerial Ace. I can throw an Incinerate. They're now deep into the red. Again, this extra Incinerate damage is wild. I have 100 energy. Disarming Voice gets the KO, and now we see what was in the back that did not want to see the Guzzlord. It's a Sableye. I fire off Disarming Voice. They're going to shield, but guess what? I make it to another Disarming Voice. This is super effective damage, and they're going to have to deal with the extra damage from the Incinerates. That does so much damage. Sableye, in what should be a positive matchup, nearly taken down from full health to 0. Guzzlord has the Dragon Claw loaded, and that is a good game. Tough lead for Skeledirge in the next match as it leads into Lanturn, but if Skeledirge has a bad lead, the backline can handle it. I'm going to save switch into Credilli. Opponent is going to send in Talonflame, and that is not a response to the Credilli save switch. It looks like they are triple weak. Even though this video is primarily featuring Skeledirge and the extra damage from Incinerate, I do also want to highlight how strong Credilli is as an anti-meta pick in this meta, as Credilli does so well at breaking apart those flying plus water cores that are going to be extremely common. Opponent firing off the back-to-back flame charges, and I'm more than happy to double shield as well, make it to the Rock Slide. I don't take the Incinerate damage, and this Rock Slide will easily one-shot the Talon. In the back, it's a Shadow Swampert. I'm going to farm up, look for the Hydro Cannon catch, and failing that catch suddenly puts me in a potentially dangerous position, because my opponent will be able to land the Earthquake and now send in the Lanturn. This is a bit awkward. My opponent does have some stored energy on the Swampert, but they do not have a Hydro Cannon loaded, and I'm one move away from my Grass Knot on the Credilli. They're going to be firing off the Surf. That will connect, and now I'm going to send Skeledirge into a Water type. Not the typical decision making when it comes to games like these, but in this case, it's going to be the win con. Surf will connect. I'm going for the Disarming Voice, and I'm going for a slight undercharge. The goal is to leave it at 1 HP. Snipe with the Credilli. Now we have the Grass Knot loaded. We can outpace the Swampert. This will be massive overkill, taking down the Swampert and securing the win. Moving into the next match, sending Skeledirge into Golbat. This is a pretty okay matchup for Skeledirge. As you're going to see, again, the boosted damage from the Incinerates just absolutely shred through anything that you go up against. Like, this is neutral damage onto a Golbat, which has okay bulk, and 4 Incinerates there has it at half health. That is wild. Disarming Voice bait gets shielded. I'm now able to make it to the Shadow Ball. They have to double shield or I easily win switch. Opponent will double shield. So I decide, you know what? Let's save switch into the Credilli and let's check and see, do they have a Steel type? Do they have a counter user in the back? They're just going to Poison Fang and now send in Galarian Stunfisk. I'm able to fire off the Grass Knot. This will hit for some heavy neutral damage onto the Stunfisk. Stunfisk continuing to farm. They make it to the Earthquake. Opponent firing off their energy on Alignment, and I'm perfectly fine with letting this go. I should be able to kill in 4 Incinerates here, which means no matter the timing they throw on, they do end up throwing on Alignment, I'm going to be able to get a 1 shield farm down. They go for the Rock Slide, that's perfectly fine. I get the farm down, I have the Shadow Ball loaded, so if they send in the Golbat, guess what? They're not going to have a Golbat for much longer. Skeledirge, Shadow Ball, gets the KO. In the back, it's Pelipper. It'll be a CMP tie, so instead of risking it, we just get the catch onto the Guzzlord, and that's game over. Weather Ball not going to do anything. I'm going to be able to make it to the crunch. I believe this is the match where I accidentally overtap. My opponent, actually never mind, my opponent just ends up outpacing here. They make it to the Hurricane, but that's fine. I have the Shadow Ball loaded, and my opponent is now going to get KO'd with their Water type by a Fire type, and we take the win. If you're wanting to run this team, one thing that I will warn is this team is very weak to a Carbink or a Bastiodon lead. If you see either of those on the lead, you're probably not going to have a great time. But outside of that, even against bad leads, like we're seeing a ton of Lanturn leads into the Skeledirge, and I'm still being able to convert those into wins. Opponent banks a ton of energy on the Lanturn, they send in Clodsire, and by giving Credilli an energy lead, I can pretty comfortably make a play for switch here. I'm just going to spam out Grass Knot after Grass Knot in this matchup and continue to apply pressure onto the Clodsire. Clodsire continuing to farm. They're going to be firing off the Stone Edge. I do barely live a Stone Edge here, but I need to make a play for switch. They have a bunch of energy on that Lanturn, but if it's aligned against the Guzzlord, that energy goes nowhere. I Grass Knot, they shield. I decide to go for the Rock Slide. This is resisted, but if it lands, I can just Bullet Seed down. The opponent is going to commit the shield. They're firing off their energy. I'm going to shield, and the moment I get to the Grass Knot, I'm going for it. Even if they catch it, that's perfectly fine because I'll have one switch. My opponent does not go for the catch. Grass Knot is going to get the KO onto the Clodsire. My opponent now going to send in Altaria. Altaria looking for the farm down, and they get it. Altaria energy is a bit scary here. I send in the Skeledirge. Opponent fires off the energy on alignment, mistiming it slightly, and that's an entire Incinerate for free. That is 20 free base damage and 20 free energy. I land the Disarming Voice. They snipe with the Lanturn, but that's the win con for me. The win con is them switching in the Lanturn and switch locking themselves, and now I get unlimited farm with the Guzzlord, and I can exit this matchup with a Dragon Claw, and Dragon Claw, while it won't quite KO the Altaria yet, will just about do the trick. I'm farming up and I'm going for the Crunch. Crunch not going to be enough to KO here, but that's good. That means I don't have to undercharge it. I do get the defense drop. The defense drop had me slightly worried that I wouldn't be able to exit this matchup with a Dragon Claw, but thankfully I'm still able to KO in 2 Dragon Tails instead of 1. In comes the Altaria, firing off the Dragon Breath. Dragon Claw gets them low, and 1 more Dragon Tail will secure the victory. We see an unexpected Pokemon on the lead in the next match, leading Skeledirge into Hypno. Haven't seen Hypno in quite some time, but with the new season, people are testing out a lot of stuff to see what works and what doesn't. I build up to the Shadow Ball, baiting with the Disarming Voice. Again, even though Hypno is a pretty bulky Pokemon, these Incinerates are adding up so much. They have enough for the Shadow Ball. I respect it, and it is the Shadow Ball. That's a big shield. I'm farming up, and I will go for the Shadow Ball. Not the greatest timing ever. They do get 2 free turns there instead of 1 if I throw on perfect timing, but 5 versus 4 is a very uncomfortable turn duration combination to try and account for. Turn duration combination, that is a mouthful right there. All right, I just decided to let it go. It's the Ice Punch. They unfortunately do get a Confusion down without the Incinerate registering since it's 4 turns versus 5 turns, but I can tank the Ice Punch and just get massive farm onto the Guzzlord. Opponent sends in Mandibuzz. I'm firing off this Dragon Claw, and then I'm going to be sending in the Credilli, and we'll see what they have in the back. Sending in the Credilli. Credilli farming up in the back. It's a Shadow Victory Bell, and a Victory Bell without shields. Not going to do well. So now we see why the opponent had to double shield a Hypno on the lead, because that Victory Bell would get absolutely shredded by the newly buffed Incinerate. 2 Rock Slides, that's going to be goodbye to the Victory Bell. I'm pretty sure that I tank a foul play here. In hindsight, I should have been safe and shielded it. They end up going for the Aerial Ace. It does get a little bit close there, so in hindsight, I definitely should have shielded it, but I'm going to be able to make it to Rock Slide number 1, and if they try and go for the farm down here, which they decide against at the last possible second, but I'm able to have this Rock Slide loaded, so I just shield, go for the Rock Slide. This will be taking out the Mandibuzz, and again, I had some very nice results with this team. Granted, it's very early, it's day 1 of the new season, but I'm loving how Skeledirge is feeling with this extra damage on Incinerate. We do pick up a slightly negative lead, leading Skeledirge into Lickitung. Opponent is going to counter switch a Shadow Gligar into the Credilli safe switch. This is quite playable for Credilli, but now I have a decision to make. Do I want switch advantage or do I want shields? Switch advantage would be very nice, as Guzzlord, of course, crushes Lickitung, but if I get shields, then potentially Guzzlord can sweep up a shield, so now I have a choice to make. I let the first move through, it is the dig. They're going to shield. It all comes down to this. Do I elect to shield back? And I decide no. I am just going to trust in Guzzlord to sweep in this endgame. I send in the Skeledirge. Opponent fires off an Aerial Ace, and they throw on alignment, not wanting to risk that next Incinerate KOing. The Aerial Ace is going to be no shielded. In comes the Lickitung. I'm farming up to 100 energy, sending in the Guzzlord, and my opponent is going to be firing off the Body Slam. What do they have in the back? Is Guzzlord able to sweep? It's the Medicham, and I'm going to lose this game because I didn't play for Switch. That is extremely unfortunate. I go for the Crunch as soon as I get it here. It ends up being a CMP tie to an Ice Punch, but at the end of the day, it's not going to matter. Unfortunately, my Skeledirge is too low of HP to sweep, and that's game over. Skeledirge continues to see bad lead after bad lead in these sets. Opponent is going to respond to the Credilli save switch with Gligar. Feel like we've seen this before. We've seen a lot of Gligar switch-ins to the Credilli. Opponent actually throws their energy on alignment, which is really, really nice for me, as I get an entire Bullet Seed for free. I'm looking to farm up, and now I'm going for the harder hitting Grass Knot. Grass Knot, better DPE and will do more. That's able to connect. That's huge. And now I have a decision to make. Do I play for alignment? And I decide yes. I have a very strong check to Lanturn in the back, so I'm going to go down a shield in order to play for switch. My opponent sends in Venusaur, and Venusaur is a lot stronger of a counter to Credilly than something like Gligar, as Venusaur forces Credilly to go for Rock Slide, whereas against the Gligar, I can go for neutral Grass Knots. Opponent is going to shield up the Rock Slide. They're looking for the farm down. They have so much energy, but oh my goodness, Credilly refusing to get knocked out, making it to the Rock Slide. Now I can send in the Skeledirge. Opponent is going to send in the Lanturn, and guess what, Lanturn? Get absolutely walled by Guzzlord. They go for the Thunderbolt. That does nothing. Guzzlord shaking the damage off here, and now going to fire off this Crunch. Crunch is going to get them deep into the red. Opponent is going to let this go, and at this point, they just don't have a good way of getting rid of the Skeledirge, so the game is won. Surf, not going to matter. I get the full farm down. They have a ton of energy on the Venusaur. They're staying in here. They're trying to fight. I'm just going to let this go. But a Frenzy Plant, not going to do enough to the Skeledirge. Opponent fires off their energy. This is totally fine. We can tank the Frenzy. Opponent goes for a little bit of bad manners, going for the Sludge Bomb, but we still take the win. All in all, the buff to Incinerate is extremely noticeable on Skeledirge. Skeledirge has a pretty solid attack stat, so those Incinerates absolutely shred through anything that doesn't resist them. Skeledirge is a Pokemon that does have its counters. As you saw, I lost a ton of leads during this video, led into a ton of Lanturns, but one thing that I really like about Skeledirge is its coverage is terrific compared to something like Alolan Marowak. The offensive trio of Fire, Ghost, and Fairy, it's really hard to have a Pokemon that's going to resist all three of those, and that just puts Skeledirge in a really, really good position to be an incredibly strong anti-meta contender. It already had that coverage, but now with the extra damage on Incinerate, this thing is a lot of fun, but of course you just have to make sure that you're covering for Lanturns, and if you're going to run it, probably do a better job for covering against Carbink and Bastiodon than I did, because if you see a Carbink lead with this team, it would not be a good time. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated, so thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.